Hi, this is my review of Dr. Trey's literature review. I wanted to talk about the topic of self-regulated learning in multimedia environments due to its relevance in online formats where many multimedia presentations exist and where it is important to be aware of and maybe even improve some self-regulatory processes. And I completely redid this literature review, chose 3 completely different studies than before, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to redo this. So the 3 studies that I chose dealt with self-regulated learning in multimedia environments. 2 were empirical studies with original data, and 1 was a review of 33 studies regarding self-regulation. In the first study, the Dellen, Liu, and Wilson study from 2013, 80 students, both undergraduate and graduate students, were given a video to watch about renewable energy sources. These videos were chosen because they contained many facts that could be learned by the participants. There were 2 groups. One group had a video viewer that offered macro-level activities, the basic play, pause, forward, and rewind, and the control group were offered micro-level activities. They were offered all of the above functionalities plus some enhanced features. The supplemental resources and practice questions were prompted by the video viewers. The note-taking was merely available and not prompted. The difference between these 3 functions, supplemental resources, practice questions, and note-taking capabilities, is important because it was shown in the study that graduate students participated more in the note-taking, which requires more self-direction than the prompted activities. We could see how the graduate students' note-taking activities were more frequent. This makes sense because of the cohort effect. Graduate students already have, quote, enacted learning behaviors, end quote, that increase deep learning. These strategies are likely to transfer between traditional and online learning environments for graduate students. In the Winters, Green, and Kostich study from 2008, they conducted a review of 33 studies down from a pool of 210 studies. An interesting search term that they used was self-regulate. Not self-regulated, not self-regulation, just self-regulate, to capture only studies for which self-regulated learning was the main focus. They didn't want to identify the subcomponents usually found in self-regulated learning like motivation, goal setting, metacognition, and they didn't want to use the term strategies in the search. They found not only self-regulated learning in multimedia, of course using words and pictures, but also hypermedia that allows the user to select links, and simulations that allow direct user manipulation of the learning environment. The authors stated that they were initially guided by 2 general directions of the literature. How do learner and task characteristics relate to student self-regulated learning within computer-based learning environments? And 2, can various learning supports or conditions enhance the quality of students' self-regulated learning as they learn with computer-based learning environments? They eventually added a 3rd question to identify future areas of research. What conceptual, theoretical, and methodological issues exist in the field of computer-based learning research? Self-regulated learning is a cyclical, recursive, and active process that encompasses factors such as motivation, behavior, and context, so it is difficult to capture in its entirety. In the context of computer-based learning environments such as multimedia, hypermedia, and simulations, the authors found that there's a lot of diversity in self-regulated learning, such as learner characteristics, task characteristics like prior knowledge, goal orientation, and learner control, and learner support. These were shown to be related to students' self-regulated learning, although students perceived themselves utilizing supports more often than they really did use them. Supplementing and replacing some measures used in research with the Think Aloud methodology would offer more accurate insight into self-regulated learning than questionnaires or interviews. And as far as outcomes, not all self-regulated learning strategies were linked to improved learning outcomes. And if supports are effective and students do use them, their use should gradually be removed or faded when the independent use of self-regulated learning is realized to be truly considered self-regulated. That's what the authors found. The third study by Artino and Stevens from 2009 looked a little deeper at the level of self-regulatory differences between the graduate and undergraduate students. Variables such as motivation, deep processing strategies, and engagement were examined in online contexts. Graduate students, of course, showed more of these traits. This study defined academic motivation as students' movement toward and engagement in learning activities. One question raised by the study for further review was to examine whether there might be developmental progression within self-regulated learning, because this development may be thought to progress through the self-regulatory process and not exist as a static trait. A surprising finding was that some of the undergraduates were more likely to have greater task beliefs and continuing motivation, perhaps because of the non-traditional nature of these undergraduates who were working adults, making greater sacrifices than some graduate students to fulfill their degree requirements. There were 8 variables studied in this study. We can see here the survey that was used. Task value, reporting of self-efficacy, personal reflection on elaboration of ideas and material, perceived critical thinking, the level of procrastination, and decisions about the online nature of the instruction, the choice, were self-reported. As you can see from the subheadings, this survey was divided into 2 ways that motivation was expressed, through motivational beliefs and motivational engagement. Beliefs include the value of the task, self-efficacy, elaboration, and critical thinking. Motivational engagement came through and was measured as procrastination and as determining the choice of delivery of the instructional delivery, whether it was online or traditional. This study was similar to the review of Winters, Green, and Kostich in that comparison of graduate students and undergraduate students was examined. So we can see how these 3 articles examine self-regulation within multimedia environments and how differing tasks and perceptions contribute to learning with different forms of media. Here are the references. Thank you for watching.